Hey, what's up everybody, this is Muth24, and today I'm going to take a look at the first volume of the Unicorn Gundam DVDs. Despite its rather peculiar name, Unicorn Gundam has quickly become one of my favorite Gundam series from the Universal Century timeline, as well as one of my favorite Gundam series of all time, and I think that's pretty cool considering that it has 2 episodes still to go before it's completed. For those who maybe aren't familiar with the Blu-ray releases, which came first, those were released 1 episode per disc. So you had episode 1 on a single disc and then episode 2 on a single disc. And before they got around to episode 3, they talked about doing a DVD release because Bandai realized not everyone who wanted to watch the series had a Blu-ray player or a PS3. So they went ahead and did a DVD release, and this first volume has the first 2 episodes on it, and then there's also a second volume out now that has episode 3 and 4 on it. For the cover art, you have Banagher on one half there, and he's the main character. And then you have the Unicorn Gundam on the other side, kind of creating like 2 halves of the same face there, which is pretty cool. You also have Audrey, you have Haro, and then you have Cardias Vist. And on the side, you have a shot of the Unicorn Gundam in destroy mode there. And then you've also got the logo for Unicorn Gundam, and then episode 1 down there. I really like the fact that it's a white box. It's just kind of different. A lot of the Gundam series, they do like gray boxes or black box art, which is also cool, you know, for space setting and stuff. But this one's just a little bit different. Cool box art on the back with the Unicorn Gundam with his beam saber out. You know, some praise from Anime News Network at the top there. Description of what's happening in these first 2 episodes, and then the names of the first 2 episodes. Episode 1 being Day of the Unicorn, and episode 2 being the Second Coming of Char. Then you have a listing of all the DVD extras, which I will get into further detail with in a moment. But one thing that's kind of cool with this is they give you a reversible cover, because the first 2 volumes of the Blu-ray had different art. So on this side you have the first volume art, and then inside of that you have the second volume's artwork, which is pretty cool. That one has a Sinanju and Banagher and then full frontal in the background, and then for the top of the binding there you have the Sinanju, and then again on the back more Sinanju. Personally, I like the Unicorn one a little bit more, but I do like the Sinanju as a mobile suit, and Full Frontal's a pretty interesting character, so I could definitely see, how someone would want to flip that over to the other artwork, and I think it's really nice that Bandai gives you that option if you want to switch it over to that. As for the disc, you have the Unicorn Gundam in destroy mode, got some, lighting up of the Psycho frame there, which is pretty cool. I have noticed with Gundam series that Bandai usually does a pretty good job of the disc art. I like the art with Zeta Gundam quite a bit. There's some of the older ones aren't quite as good. Like Gundam Wings is a little bit boring, and Char's Counterattack is just a space background with the title. But this one's pretty cool. So for those who are maybe unfamiliar with Unicorn Gundam, it takes place rather late in the Universal Century, about 3 years after the events of Char's Counterattack and the whole wrapping up with the Amuro and Char storyline. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat that there are some points, not so much in the first 2 episodes, but that come into play later on, that you're going to want to know your Universal Century timeline info before you dive headfirst into this. There's a lot of things they're going to make reference to, a lot of plot points that are relevant to the older series. Not so much the original Gundam, but more like Zeta Gundam and Double Zeta, and maybe to a lesser extent Stardust Memory, but also Char's Counterattack. And if you want a little bit more rounded out concept of where things are going from Unicorn Gundam, I'd recommend checking out F91 and Victory Gundam, but those are a little less important than having Zeta, Double Zeta, and Char's Counterattack under your belt before you go ahead and try tackling this. Even if you're not familiar with those, though, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this series. I'm really not sure what to make of Banagher at this point. I've seen the first 3 episodes. I haven't watched episode 4 yet. He's definitely interesting, but I don't really have that much to connect with him yet. Whereas with a lot of other Gundam series, the lead character, you get an idea of who they are and what their agenda is and everything very early on. With this series, you really have an idea of who all the other players are and what their agendas are, like the Vis Foundation and Audrey and the Sleeves Neo Zeon group and Full Frontal, and you definitely get an idea of what they're doing. But Banagher is kind of thrust into this whole stranger in a strange land scenario. So it's kind of an interesting take, I think. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the grand scheme of things. But for the first episode, it's largely about Banagher and Audrey, and it's kind of cool because you get to see a lot of the finer details and inner workings of the colony and just life there. We get to see Banagher with his classmates and learning about the history of the One-Year War and the Neo-Zeon movements and the final battle between Char and Amuro, and how that's sort of become the stuff of legends to some extent, even though it's still relatively recent in their history. But it also goes back to the very beginning of the Universal Century, which is something that hasn't really been covered in any other Gundam series, at least not in great detail. And I don't know exactly what role that's going to end up playing, but you do get to see the shift into the Universal Century timeline from the Anno Domini timeline, and how the Vist Foundation is sort of involved with certain events that happened early on. There's also the role of Anaheim Electronics in sort of the monopoly that they have on the mobile suit industry at the time, and there's certainly some underhanded dealings going on, but we don't really know where those are going. But that's one thing the series does really well, is it hooks you in great and keeps the suspense going, but also keeps the action. And it's one thing that I was reminded of both Stardust Memory and 8th MS Team, coincidentally, both OVAs that were pretty well done in terms of animation and story for their time, is that there's a nice balance of action and story, and I think that carries over as well to Unicorn Gundam. You're not going to have a ton of explosions in the first episode. There's going to be some action parts. There's going to be some hand-to-hand fighting between, like, Banagher and Merida a little bit there. And then you're going to have, like, a kind of a standoff at points with some of the Sleeves guys, but it's not so action-heavy that it completely detracts the plot of what this episode is building up towards. Episode 2, a little bit more action-heavy, but still there's that sense of tension and character development, and I think that's probably going to remain consistent until the end of the series, which would be great. I really enjoyed how they've tackled that so far. But, yeah, Banagher lives on the colony, and he sort of gets tied up in all of this by accident, but at any rate, they're developing this Unicorn Gundam near the colony in secrecy, and the Sleeves want it for their own ends to get the Laplace's box, which we don't really know what the box is. It's mentioned a lot. It's apparently of great importance, but no one really knows where it is or what it even is. And the Unicorn Gundam apparently is the key. And after a series of events, the Unicorn Gundam falls into the hands of Banagher, and there's also a lot of development with Audrey as to, who she actually is, which I won't spoil for anybody. But she's pretty important. Now, the pacing of Unicorn Gundam might be a little bit slower than some people are used to with other Gundam series, and that has to do with the fact that they are keeping that balance throughout of plot and action. But it also has to do with the fact that every episode is an hour, and the production quality is really impressive with this. Like, it's almost standalone movie quality. The art style is really great. It's got that little bit more realistic look like you had with Zeta Gundam. I mean, I realize Zeta Gundam's older, so it looks a little bit cartoony by today's standards, but at the time, that was definitely the look they were going for. And same thing with, like, 8th MS Team and Stardust Memory. It's got that same style, but you also have the, new age computer-generated coloring and some of the 3D models and stuff as the Unicorn Gundam's, transforming and stuff. It looks very clean. It looks very pretty on the screen. And I think that's another great factor for the series, is just how well it looks. The soundtrack is amazing. Just overall, this is a great series as far as the production value is concerned, and it really helps that the story's as engaging as it is, too. One thing that really sets Unicorn Gundam apart from other Gundam series, and really any anime in general, is the fact that the English dub and the Japanese audio with English subtitles were released at the same time when they did the initial release of this series on Blu-ray. So you do get both of them in this volume, and I have to say the English dub is one of the better ones in the Gundam series. I'd say it's up to the caliber of like 8th MS Team or something like that. Definitely better than some of the older ones, and even Zeta Gundam's 2004 series wasn't that great of a dub. But this one I can definitely recommend, but again, if you're a fan of the English subtitles with the Japanese audio, it's on there for you. Taking a look at the special features on the back of the case, there is a recap of Episode 1, and then there's a bunch of promotional videos for Episode 1 when the series was, first coming out, when it was getting close to its release date. So you have, like, 5 different promotional videos, although one of them is like a long version and a short version, probably random on like TV ads or something like that. There's also TV commercials for episode 1, and then you have character highlights for both Benager and Audrey. You have a mobile suit highlight, and one for the Unicorn Gundam and then one for the Kshatriya, and then, like I mentioned before, the reversible wrap cover. The menus are also done very well. Looks pretty cool. It kind of reminded me a little bit of how they did them on 8th MS Team, where it was like a war military broadcast on the news of that one. This one, it's like you're inside the cockpit of the Unicorn Gundam. You've got all these different options on the screen in front of you, and you've got scenes from the show playing out on the screen, which is pretty cool. As for the mobile suit and character highlights, they're alright. They're not quite what I thought they would be. With 8th MS Team and the Endless Waltz DVDs, you had these areas where you could just, like, on the menu, you could click in the special features to look at the mobile suit, and it give you all the specs of the mobile suit itself, and it'd say, like, for example, the tall geese is this tall, and it weighs this much, and it can get this much of a thrust output, and these are the weapons it uses, and this is who it's been piloted by, and this is something important it did in the film. I thought it was going to be like that. It's actually not. It's really just kind of a highlight reel of those characters and those mobile suits in the most important scenes from the series, or at least the most memorable scenes or something like that. Those are only in Japanese, and there's not any dialogue spoken. It's just the text on the screen is in Japanese, so you can turn the subtitles on and it'll just read below it what they're saying. But a lot of it's just basically you have the character or you have the mobile suit, and they'll play a track from the series over top of it. And most of them last, I don't know, somewhere between like 30 seconds and a minute long. They're not really that long, so it's not like you're going to spend a ton of time watching these little highlight reels. But at the same time, not quite what I thought they would be. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I did like with the 8th MS Team and the Endless Waltz DVDs where they gave those specifications of the mobile suits. But again, if you're a fan of Unicorn Gundam and you don't have the Blu-ray, or you don't have a Blu-ray player, and you're looking for the DVD release, or were wondering how the DVD release compares, I have to say I quite recommend it. Even though the special features aren't quite what I thought they would be, the series itself is just awesome. And even if you're not that big a Gundam fan, I definitely recommend you check this out. Like I said, it's going to help if you know your Universal Century history before you go into this. But either way, highly recommended series. Lots of fun to watch. Really excited where this is going. And that's pretty much it. So with that, I will see you guys next time.